Alright, so admittedly, I would have been smarter to have grabbed water before starting this, but I didn't, so I'm probably going to have to do that very soon. I did end up committing the cardinal sin again, and I fed the devs money via buying cross crowns so I could buy the present hunter pack, because stuff is fly. So I got the Grunch, I got the sack of presents, and I got the permafrost paint, which will take a while to scroll through. But no regretty, people. And I got extra crowns on the off chance, well, because it was a dumb number as per usual. But then I thought, well, if the Concrete Buster CK for the Arbiter rolls around again anytime soon, because I saw it a couple weeks ago, but I didn't really feel like buying crowns specifically for it, because again, it was a dumb number, then I'll have enough to grab that as well. And I was actually really bad at math, so I guess I will have enough to buy 2 legendary CK. Actually, no, I'm 2 coins short of being able to buy 2 legendary CKs, so it's actually perfectly as I designed. So I'm going to basically just go over builds that are taking up slots in my exhibition currently. Interestingly, the Xbox fan was hella worrying before this started, but now that I'm streaming, which I would assume is more resource intensive, it's actually quieter now, so I don't know what that's about. Yeah, so new update, Savior, absolute unit, tallest cabin in the game. That's cool. And helicopter blades, that's cool. So I'll get to that, but basically I'm just doing the video to have these builds recorded somewhere effectively so I can purge them, because there's been a few that I've made that I haven't featured yet, and a few that I made that I haven't I made after the last videos, I guess, rather. So to start with, probably the oldest one that I totally forgot to talk about was the gift for a witch one. So my blueprint did not place. I don't know how many upvotes it actually got. To be fair, these are all pretty fire, so no hate to those. I didn't even see any of these 3 show up during the voting process, and I didn't see my own blueprint, and I didn't see either of the clanmates' blueprints. So I don't know what was up with that, but some wacky voting stuff, I think, for what was getting shown to who. In any case, my build for that, I thought it was pretty good, but evidently the general populace disagreed, was the Apothecary. So, admittedly, the fact that it showed the username rather than the build name also kind of complicates things. As per usual, I try to make it as a art build that was at least semi-functional. So pretty much every button does something different for this, to the same end effect, but obviously you can see slapped on decor, a couple of stickers, very much made it look like a roving apocalypse raider sort of build. Definitely designed to be scavenger-esque as far as coming across anything that you can use is utilizing that. That's why it's also, packed with junk. So, as far as the actual important bits, it's running crickets, it's running a Skinner, the Toad CK, you can actually see at the back. Toad also being related to, witchy stuff. And that's pretty much it as far as the energy. So if we actually go in and start driving around, you can see we have our little witchy duck friend with their cauldron. So I can turn on some lights, which causes a little glow there. and turn on the brakes, which causes more lights to show up. I can... Probably be easiest if I get a kill. Get a kill, that causes the hologram. I can also add more smoke via the feathered serpent decor, add some flare, and then maniacal cackling of the duck. So overall, again, I felt maybe a little over the top as far as having all the particle effects, but very much meant to be as witchy as I could manage. But just being basically be able to tow, you know, come across builds or salvage cars or wreckages or whatever, and then being able to take them, chop them up, and use them for their own purposes, nefarious or otherwise. So that was that. Like I said, didn't really score at all. I did do some kind of funky placements of stuff, which is you can kind of see at the hard module sort of hanging off the back there that the hangman is attached to. Just in order to get all of the stuff in the or underneath the cauldron so the effects went over top. I mean, it's also kind of obvious when you like look directly above that there is a lot of different stuff shoved in there. So let's see if I can't flip it a little bit. Yeah, so it's probably not the best view here, I suppose, but I'm honestly not going to like download and go through all of it. But you can see there's a bunch of different parts in there. So the fire, flame, smoke, chimney thing being, oh, that's actually a great angle, you can kind of see it through there. The feathered serpent, so activatable decor, which used to be in the same category as flares. Fun fact, now it's a different one, so you can have both. So that would be that bad boy. Oh, and I totally forgot I even have the evil horn, evil laughter to go with the ha 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 of the witch duck. That's it, good stuff. A lot of stuff going on here. Oh, look at that. Nice little interruption as I build stuff. I think I'm done building that stuff. I do appear to be done building that stuff. Excellent. So that was the wig apothecary. So yeah, I'll probably just delete that because now I have it in video form here. But you know, spent a lot of time on this, adding details. So I think if somebody does want to, you know, download it, use it or whatnot, it can definitely be rebuilt pretty simply. Maybe I'll keep it up for a bit. It's a neat little art build. Also going to be getting rid of a bunch of other blueprints here. By far the most upvoted blueprint I've gotten was this bad boy, which is the next I'm going to talk about. So called the Rule of Cool. Basically, I've been super interested in the Echo and its pack for a long ass time because the structural parts are fire and I absolutely love heavy armor. So this was my basically first attempt once I had all the prestiges for Steppenwolf's, slapping all the parts together. So it includes, you know, the wedge, the vanguard, got the home front, western and eastern front, and then the doubled fenders here. It always bugged me because there's actually, I'm gonna have to reload this page. So if I go to this door, we go and look at the war machine. There's actually like a strip of metal, I don't know if you call it rebar or whatever, but that goes down the length of the Echo and the front pieces. And ideally the fender in my eyes would sit directly on that, but they added these like spaced parts, these parts to space it out, which isn't like the worst idea ever or anything, but it does mean that the parts aren't connected like I liked. So I will get a different view here. So the Echo has its little rebar mounting whatever thing there, and then that is continued on the prestige parts for it. So there's some more rebar on the eastern front. The home front has a tiny little bit. And then the line of defense slots quite nicely over those. So this was me doing that, slapping them all together, having this nice continuous unbroken line, and then sort of building around it. So I ended up with the room in the back what was a 4x4, so I just decided to slap a kaiju, because again, while yes it is primarily an art build, I wanted to make it, you know, somewhat functional. So it fit, it's single weapon, reload based, no reason not to in my eyes. And then I basically worked at filling out the gaps otherwise, so try to obviously make it quite beefy, lots of other prestige parts, heavier parts, obviously freight train plow on the front. So I thought it looked pretty friggin' fly. Obviously a lot of other people did as well, which was pretty neato. It's extremely simple as far as it goes. Like, it is, you know, tagged as an art build and labeled Rule of Cool. It's not meant to be any sort of big bopper in PvP, although you can certainly try to do that. But it's, yeah, literally it's the cabin with kaiju and a reload booster. And then you've got some fuel and the currently dragging parts in the ground, and the iris module for higher zoom in without actually having to commit to a scope, because there's really no room for it on top here. That wouldn't be, I could slap it on the nose, but then it would block the kaiju and it would also get shot off super early, so wasn't too worried about that. So if we do a terrible job of flipping it. It's cool. Just as designed, make a little spooky scorpion explosion as I stunt on the bots in my testing range. What are these guys? Maybe the problem is I'm going too fast. I'm channeling my inner Sonic too low. This is also like a vaguely reminiscent of the actual vehicle that the pack is based off of, but that wasn't the intention, just what happens when you end up working off the profile of it. Nice, so I'm not going to fire, so you're going to have to listen to the annoying buzzing effect just because of the, otherwise it's going to bop me around while I'm upside down. But pretty straightforward layout underneath. As per usual, I have fuel because I'm a goofy goober and run fuel. The flywheel is actually mounted directly underneath the kaiju, so the kaiju is mounted onto that because there is a 2x4x4 gap there, and then underneath that, which you can kind of see from the side there between the two tires, is the P1 charge. So again, not exactly any crazy great design or anything, but it just works. TM. Then underneath the hood on the front, I have the engine, which in this case is a Dun Horse rather than the hot red. Sorry, no, it is the hot red. So I have that underneath the front. So that would probably get shot off pretty early and easily because it's exposed, but I didn't want to push this plow up because this, I mean, looks sick as fuck. So yeah, not really a whole lot more to it. Pretty straightforward as an art build, I think. Okay, so that one's definitely going to stay up. I'll keep the apothecary up because why not? It's another art build. What else do we got that I haven't talked about before? This was an attempt that, I mean, now defunct due to the changes to the step spider. So for those who aren't aware, step spider used to be a pseudo heavy cabin, i.e. it had higher speed and more energy than a heavy cabin, but it had higher mass limit and tonnage and lower speed than the medium cabins. So it was a pretend tank cabin, and it was glorious, and I loved it, and it's wonderful. And then they're like, you know what? Instead of having this step spider named cabin that goes with the step spider and the spider packs, we're going to make it not have to do with spider legs at all, and we're just going to give the perk the step spider had to the legs to begin with. So yeah, I don't like that, suffice to say. but this was one of the builds that was focused around it. So at the time, you could move 45 kph with the big rams as per their speed cap while in leg mode. With the step spider, it would be another 10 kph, so you'd be able to go 55. And then I slapped on a Geagle alongside augers on it to make up for the additional mass and tonnage. So that would allow me to go the full 70 kph the augers allow in wheel mode with big rams, and then I would be able to still move at the 55 kph while in leg mode, as well as having the auger as a sort of a form of battering ram. As you can see, it's not necessarily a wedge deterrent so much as like an active, like actually attacking something. So I poked around with it in raids for a little bit, and it was pretty neat, but now it doesn't work at all. And I mean, it was something for raids more than anything else. So I'm not gonna go like too crazy into detail for this either, because there's not a whole lot more that's about it that's irrelevant anymore, especially because I can barely move it. But you can kind of see what I did with the armoring, the Apollo, those parts underneath. Pretty straightforward, nothing crazy exciting. I mean, I built right up to and around the step spider, as I tend to be doing with cabins, is I'll build as tight around them as possible. So for instance, the freight train plow actually overlaps with the step spider a little bit. But as far as like armoring, there wasn't really anything crazy going on. So I'll just flip this guy if it even lets me. I am speed. But then they killed the step. I mean, they didn't kill it, they gave it a perk, which is arguably better, people were saying, but I haven't used it in the meantime, so I can't say for sure. But it is allegedly better, just not my baby anymore. So there goes that whole spending all the time and energy fusing it, as tends to happen when they rework stuff, but especially so when they completely change the perk and classification of the cabin. So it also has a weird 68 kph speed, which isn't like necessarily a problem in and of itself. Just another weird component of it. So it's in the same category as other medium cabins going 70 kph, but it's in the weird niche, like weird number variant of it alongside the Omnibox for going 68. So yeah, that was the Goliathus, very much named because of the reminiscence over the, Goliath beetle. And I use the Genius as the name. Yeah. I think that is probably good to delete now that it doesn't work anymore. I could have sworn there's something kind of interesting I did with armor maybe on this, but I couldn't even tell you what it is now. And like looking at stuff, I'm not seeing anything. So I guess that was not the case. So I will yeet, very much like a Goliath beetle might. These other builds have been talked about. The Tarantula is a super old. It's actually my first spider build. It's on version 3. It's going to need version 4 or 5. I've talked about it a bit in the past, but basically it's just a sniper. But now the step spider's perk is only relevant to fixed angle rocket launchers. So now this doesn't work at all, and now the mass is all fucky wucky. Yay. So that's a thing. But I'll keep it up because it's a build that I've been consistently updating and working on. What else do we got here? I think that's probably going to be it for the exhibition, for at least the new builds that I haven't talked about yet. It's not scrolling, there we go. Except for this bad boy, because this bad boy is now way more viable now that we actually have a propeller. So this was made for the 4th of July contest a year ago, something like that. It was basically just taking the ghost cabin, which is modeled more or less after a completely bastardized Russian Mi-24 helicopter, which is badass as hell, even though I definitely called it the Heine in games a lot to demean it, because it was an absolute brute in most video games that have it. And its nickname is the Hind, so Heine was a very low-hanging fruit. Yeah, so I basically made an eagle motif with bullet crown and gun wings, and I did not win anything in the contest. But yeah, so the idea was pretty cool, and then they completely reworked the hitbox for it. And in fact, I actually had a build that was rather popular. I mean, it's not a new one for the sake of this video, but that had the Ghost and the Stillwinds. But now that, again, the Ghost has been reworked and we can actually have helicopters, I deleted the other build too, because a helicopter. So this originally worked via internal hovers, which don't, exist here anymore, because the changes to that meant that they just auto-deleted themselves in old builds. But basically, the way it works if you have mixed movement parts is wheels on a hover build will force you to the ground. So you could drive around on the ground like this. Very cool. And then I actually have a wasp hidden on the back there, and you would be able to use the wasp to blow off the frames looping around the outside. And it normally wouldn't blow up the tail, but the tail is now closer to the ground as a result of there not being hovers. That's not the right button. So I don't think I can really show it very well, but in any case, then the hovers would take over and push you, you'd be able to fly around very poorly due to it being internal hovers, but as a, helicopter without these wheels. So it's basically using the old method of doing fusion builds, which is wasp docking, which is just blowing off parts. In this case, frames, which are incredibly difficult to, do because you can't attach them to anything else. And I had to snake the main frame through the internal of the build. And then the Ghost hitbox still sucks ass, but it also sucked ass back then. So I couldn't get a single central wheel on the front, so I just looped it all the way around. Yeah, so it was a bit of a bastard. I did do the research on the blades rotating the correct way, as well as the which is sort of indicated by the radar on top, as well as the tail rotor. Not a super big deal, I guess, but mention it anyway. And yeah, so we can do a lot better than this now, so much better. I was going to rework it with the hover changes, and I tried, and I actually went over that in one of the other videos, and it was just miserable. But now that we have an actual full-fledged fucking propeller, we got version, I don't even know what to call it, it might be more than 2.0. This is PAX, silly. It's whatever the current version is. So we got this badass bad boy. And oh boy, does it spark joy. So it is thinner than the other one because it doesn't need internal hovers. It is a little bit longer on the body, shorter overall, I think, minus the tail. The tail I still have some work to do in figuring out making it look better. And then it's actually a lot more combat viable, mostly because of the propeller and the new, game mode. So let's disassemble it. Plan is to replace the pyres on the wings with hurricanes, although that will throw it over the power score bracket, so I'll have to figure out something out with that. But in the meantime, basically just, use the propeller. I am double dipping on durability on it, so it is connected to an Omamori that I cannot effectively wrap the side intakes around to make it look nice, and I've already complained about it on the forums, and the response is probably going to be submit a bug report, even though it's not a bug. But then I also have a Colossus. So this thing is hella tanky, which is good because most of the rest of the build isn't, and sort of important for the game mode. So yeah, made it look good. Got a neutrino scope, got the belly rounded, got some more ammo. Used the Torino bonnets, which are amazing large parts that like fit the shape. Have a couple more prestige parts that work on it. It's glorious. It's great. If I can figure out the position of this a little bit better and the tail rotor, I can upgrade the tail rotor with the RD2 keen, but currently the keen's rotation is blocked by the elbows, and if I delete the elbows, it's still blocked by the helicopter propeller. So I either got to extend the tail a bit or just deal with it being the listener. So I haven't decided which of that yet. This actually uses slightly less parts than the other build, but I'm going to be working on, you know, optimizing it further. On the inside, we have a bootstrap which wraps around and protects the Omamori, which both are in front of the chameleon, protecting that. Kind of important to actually trigger the ghost's perk, which relies on invisibility for those who are not aware. And then, of course, we have the Colossus in the tail guarding all of that, as well as some ammo hidden / protected underneath it. So, yeah, I spent like 6 hours working on this. No guilt, no fear. Got some Avia fenders. They are anchored to some beefy structural parts on the inside of the build. I was debating trying to throw them in further and connecting them to the Omamori, but would have been pain and suffering and made very stubby wings, so I didn't do that. And then of course we got the armaments, which is Pyres currently, maybe eventually Hurricanes. So because it's pertinent, I'm just gonna throw this in a match. I haven't tried it since I've updated it like significantly. Wow, that was quick. So I don't have any reason to believe this will necessarily go extremely well, nor am I comfortable with the current control scheme, nor do I want to completely reset all my controls for this one brawl. So we'll see how it goes. But if you're not familiar with the game mode, or how pro I am at Crossout, with some of the scum of the earth weapons, you get to see that. So that's fun. Oh, look at all my contribution. Nice, good job, me. Love this map, though. Oh, the bastards. Lots of pyres, love it. Completely reasonable. Oh, Kaiju's a new one. This is not the game mode for Kaijus, you silly. You goofy goober. Oopsie. Swear I know what I'm doing. Love it. There's so many like just different military helicopters that everybody made. I appreciate everybody's immediate love and embracing of just making a bunch of fucking attack choppers in the game rather than doing like what they expected, which was just doing builds but with propellers. Love it as a fellow helicopter maker myself. Look at that. That dude dodged that stuff so good. Excuse me, Florence, that's fucking rude. Jerk. Kaiju dude is out for blood, and they're doing a very good job of not dying either. Oh, practically begun. That's problematic. Damn it, Florence. Fuck off. I'm trying to kill your buddy. Look at that. I only have one weapon. I'm still killing him. Just being a jerk. Love it. Played so much Battlefield. I love being a helicopter pilot. I love that the controls were a little bit more customizable here. Something like a super niche control scheme. Ouch. Oh, hey, by the way, that's the dude who made the first content. This is not related to anything else in the video whatsoever. But I mentioned how there was somebody who made and used a quote in as part of the bait build video, even though it wasn't a bait build, it was quite the opposite. It was like a hiding in plain sight build. But they made a build that looked like a crate, like a sea can, and then tried to use it to like hide from people by using the griffin to mask the name and like enemy indicator. So that was that Puff Mick Kush Cloud. They're the one who used it in Red Light, the Ravager tag infected game mode thing from last year. 2 years ago at this point? I don't know. It was a while. Oh no, Florence. God damn it, fuck off, bro. Why you gotta be so on my ass? Completely unnecessary. Love me some helicoptering though. Look at these people hiding indoors. Silly as you can't hide from an attack helicopter like that. Now you can, however, have them get distracted by your buddies. That is a completely valid option. Oh, I wasn't even out of range, bro. Well, sorry, I wasn't out of time in the out of range zone. But I did appear to fly too high. My wings melted. So yeah, that's that, and that's that build. And I'm gonna tweak around with it some more, cause this is a motherfucking helicopter, bro. So that's cool, that's great, that sparks joy. And then Clanmate is running, I don't know what their build actually looks like. But something at least somewhat similar, I suppose, since they're running the same chassis. They just copied the Murica Mi-24 at my suggestion, but they are using Stillwinds instead. So let's visit the garage and check out that build. I wonder if it's going to have its engine start just propellering off. No. Reasonable. So they are running, oops, careful. So this is bad zooming. Okay, cool. So they're running the still ones instead. So obviously haven't 100% figured out the like end positioning of them. They are running Omni wheels instead for reasons I don't fathom. But otherwise sort of the same chassis as, you know, the prior build. Not as good as the current one, you know, but speaking of the return to garage from the garage visit, yes, of course. Current version did away with the tricycle wheel configuration, as you may have noticed, and is just running 2 front wheels, because trying to put back wheels on this thing sucks, and trying to put a front single wheel sucks, especially if you're trying to scope things, and I need to have the scope on the bottom since the weapons point downwards. So yeah, I just haven't dealt with that at all other than this. But if I do turn off the propeller, it works like the bare minimum as far as being able to drive on the ground. So that's an option too. Why would you want to when you can, you know? Okay, well apparently I have a phone call, so I'm just going to mute myself real quick. Alright, back to your regularly scheduled car destruction. So it works, TM. So I'm probably not going to change it, but if they wanted to change some of the hitboxes, maybe add some retractable wheels, allow us to fit the small or low clearance wheels underneath the frames, you know, stuff like that, I'd be okay with it. Yeah, also worth noting, because I tried, and I'm sure people have also tried and cried, you can't actually fit wheels underneath the wheel well, the fender, properly. Because, you know, life is filled with suffering or whatever. Like even the low clearance ones doesn't work. I can clear all these other parts. Very obviously don't have anything to interfere with. It doesn't work. Sucks, but very good helicopter. Very excited to do more. Alright, other builds. This is me fucking around with the idea of using a mine Iraq build in PvP in case people be bullies and do like something similar running Seal Club. So it's actually really mean because it has almost 4,000 health and it's kings and it has the Colossus for added durability to the hardened tracks, which already have a lot of durability due to their innate damage resistance. It has the Omamori, and those touch the kings and make them more buffy, as well as the Ermac itself, which is, you know, was literally overpowered for quite a bit there. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't a novel. That's funny. Does a traffic cone treat the camera as a hitbox it needs to climb on top of? That is so wild. Anyway, this isn't a novel idea by any means. I'm not even the first person who came up with this. But, yeah, I just made a variant because I wanted to fuck around with mines in raids. And I had the Ermac and these other parts. So I'm like, I've seen people run this kind of build. I'm sure I can probably build it better. So this is me doing that, I guess. Interesting to note, I have the mines pop out at the sides here. The hitbox for the hardened track, I could have swore didn't let you do this. So I think when they either reworked the visuals for it or at some point during one of the dozen hitbox changes for, you know, stuff, they allowed you to actually do this, because I ran the mines like 2 years ago and ran it on the icebox and the RP and whatnot, and I couldn't do this. At least I don't recall being able to do this, so I think that that's new, quote-unquote newer. And then the third one's at the back, so very simply it's just 3 mines, so no Skinner, but it's meant to be ridiculously tanky and have a lot of denial opportunity. I did have the keys changed at one point, so it is supposed to actually be the ability to only lay one at a time on the sides, but obviously when I made that update one time I did not save it, so I'm doing it now. Can also peek around a little bit. So very actually limited on mass because I don't have a fused Ermac, so they are all light frames, even the 2x4s, so that has a real risk of going poorly, but whatever, is what it is. I have ammo connected to a rift, so I can blow that off if I, you know, don't need the extra ammo capacity anymore, or if I'm gonna pull a fire, worried about that stuff. Very beefy train plows, lots of large beefy parts at the back, hardly a shocker. And then the mines themselves with another ammo pack and the Omamori, which connects to all 3 king mines as well as the Ermac. I did poke around with the premise of having like an optional upgrade thingy where I'd be able to slap on the Apollo and then run the 4 mine layers. But unfortunately, if you do that, then you completely cut off frames unless you make it wider than 8. And I so did not want to do that because things really only play nice with powers of 2. So I am going to save over that. And I don't even know what I call this build. I didn't have a name for it, did I? I had a spreadsheet. Don't know if I named the spreadsheet. Oh, I think the original idea too was to run this with Sabbaths, so it'd be even worse. So it's like if you stick near me, you're speeding me up, I'm getting damage resistance, and I'm constantly dealing AoE damage. Something like that. So I think I called it Evolution, but I couldn't really get the Sabbath wheels playing nice, which is just kind of par for the course with me trying to get Sabbath wheels working. Yeah, so the build was named Evolution, but this one isn't actually evolving since it's running Hardened Drex instead of the Omamori. So, what do I want to name it? Whatever, I'm just going to call it Evolution until I come up with a better name and or rework it to include the Sabbaths, although that'd be a complete like build rework. That's not going to be like a quick 10-15 minute thing. So there's that. Another spider build which has been axed. Basically my last attempt of using the step spider with the big rams before the nerf. So I use this in raids to quite a good degree of success as far as purple cabins without fused mass limit tend to go in hard raids. So it is a sporb, it is a spherical or a orb spider build. So yeah, big spoiler. Again, not really anything super crazy exciting as far as what I did with it. But Iron Seals, Trombone, Cyclones, and then the premise of this was to be hyper agile with the Cyclones, so to be able to skirmish effectively with them. I will note I did do some fucky wucky stuff with the like armor redundancy points, and I'm going to note this here. I didn't actually note it in the post because this is kind of hard to explain without doing a video about it, so maybe I'll just link this at some point. But the step spider cabin isn't symmetrical for some reason for its hitbox, so while you can wrap a lot of stuff around it, and I actually tend to do very much that. So a good example being you can wrap it with the strength and slopes, which personally is my favorite to do on it. Although ideally, pull it forward so it's actually like flush with the cabin, but it's not going to worry about that for the mounting points right now. For this build specifically, as you may have noticed, I have buggy grills actually stuffed in the 1-ish by 2-ish by 4-ish gap, and then I have another 1 by 1 by 4 part out front to act as redundancy in theory to the train plow, because it's attached not very strongly by stuff, but whatever. Just mostly me cramming as much armor into places as I can, even if you're not really supposed to. So that's a thing, and you should also, in theory, be able to do it with the catheters, because that was what I was poking around with first before I did the buggy frames. But oh my god, did they actually fix it? Big if true. Like when I made this build like 3 weeks ago, I could put the one catheter on one side, but I couldn't put the other on the other. Oh no, it's still fucked. Yeah, see, so you can't actually push this one pip in, whereas you can on this side. So I don't know what that's about. Like the mesh doesn't even look like it's asymmetrical or anything. But the hitbox do, I guess. So yeah, that's a funny thing about this build. For the other stuff I did for armoring, I mean, nothing super crazy exciting for the guns per se. I have it on, the damage pass-through parts, including the buggy frame, or the buggy engine cover, which is clipping into the, step spider mesh, kind of, as you saw. Just because the cyclones are too wide to actually directly mount onto the step spider, which is also why the Goliathus had that weird like triangular formation for its weapons. It's just to have the millers on the front attached to it. probably most notably on the build, other than my little armor hacks as per usual, is I have an enormous drop section at the bottom, which I have handily labeled with the "your trash" sign, which is weird because it doesn't feel like it's particularly dissing people. Like if it were a hologram, maybe, but it just looks like somebody being a responsible citizen and like picking up litter and disposing of it in the right spot. So I just use it as a general like trash sign. So that's what this entire chunk is, and even before I did the the Step Spider Gods nerf, it was way too heavy, honestly, and it's still, I mean, it definitely is now, but it was way too heavy even before the nerfs, so I couldn't do anything more than the heavy 1x frames on the front for the front pair of legs, but the actual main frames for the build didn't have any redundancy whatsoever, and they're lightweight 4x8s. But the benefit of that is I have this nice monstrous chamber underneath that houses the Apollo, just the Apollo, and then a shit ton of armor. So is nice, but like you can drop it. Now you don't have the Apollo, and you're actually not crazy over encumbered because that's just how much mass is there. And notably, the home front actually stays because it's not connected to the drop pod. It's connected to the iron seals, and it stays there to protect those even when these other pieces are gone. So the stuff is all connected via these two rifts in the center, thus also the weird spacing on the lightweight frames, and also why the iron seals are tucked underneath the frames as well, just because there's not really a whole lot of space on the build. So yeah, I tucked stuff underneath and then made it a drop pod, which is pretty cool. I mean, this isn't the first time I've done it or anything, but this is by far the most severe one. It's what, 500, 800, 900 kilos of armor, so a ton of armor, and then another 1.1 tons of Apollo. So my drop pod things are definitely not normally 2 tons. So yeah, big, beefy, delicious. That was probably my favorite part of this one, but I shall also toss this build due to Step Spider no longer working with it. So I either need a like new cabin or new build entirely for having to rebuild it from the ground up, so that's fun. Let's see what else we got. Me poking around with the triple Helios trombone power unit idea in PvP. I haven't had like a crazy amount of success, but sorry, not PvP, in raids, but in theory I think I could be a monster in PvP, and I haven't seen it yet from anybody, because you could get the damage bonus from, of course, the Helios, from the Photon, from J, if you get all 4 stacks by firing at max range, and the trombone. Literally killing things too fast to show, but like, yeah, disgusting amount of damage, especially because unlike on the orb, the damage also deals damage directly to the cab if all the projectiles hit, as per the Helios's perk, even if you don't hit the cabin. So that yellow stuff is the damage it deals by bypassing. It's glorious, it's great, and the trombone always targets the middle of the build, so it has a pretty good chance of hitting the cabin, and it applies to the perk of it. So it's just disgusting, honestly, is what it is. So I can shoot, for instance, the Leviathan, pretty big beefy thing, not likely to generally hurt it a whole lot. Got the claw wheel buffs, got the J buff, got everything, and I'm just blasting it. I'm hitting armor, but I'm still dealing 100 damage to the cabin per volley. Glorious. Even though I can't hit the cabin, I'm killing it. And if you're even better about determining your range, you're like, oh, I'm at exactly 80 away, even with everything moving, you can swap to the faster damage boost. And it's just a lot of damage. So it's mostly an experimental build because I haven't managed to get it going like super successfully, especially for trying to get an 8 claw wheels figured out in a good formation that also lets me armor stuff well. But this is the current one I have in any case, and I poked around with it in raids a little bit, and again, it's just disgusting damage, especially against Steppenwolf. This is the new descendant of Tank Soup, which has had a couple of mentions in prior builds. So it is for the clanmate, which is focused on running the fixed angle machine guns, specifically on the machinist for a ludicrous amount of damage resistance. So very much like another build, which I'll get to later, but also the evolution build. It's focused on just having a gross amount of durability / damage resistance on specific parts. So in this case, it's the weapons. So this shouldn't be new since the Vindicator, which is the legendary version of the Guardian, dropped with the machinist, but basically just having, oh, if you shoot things, you get damage resistance on the cabin, which says, oh, if you have a lot of durability, you also get durability for your weapon. So it's just weapon tanking twice over. With the ML200 buff, rework, whatever, changes things for, you know, the better in theory. So yeah, it has neat little weapon pods on the side again. These are, that's funny, I actually deleted it by accident, evidently, or just deleted it for the mass. But there are supposed to be gun mounts in there to hold everything together and act as sort of like a spacer buffer for stuff. It has train plows on the front because Lamau chew through those. Frustratingly, as per usual, the hitbox on the machinist is terrible. So people said that the machinist hitbox is terrible, and I'm like, well, yeah, obviously, like, look at this thing. It doesn't have any front or like side or like even most of the top pips, but it had a pretty cool nook, and you could do some pretty funky stuff with frames building around the nook. But then I actually used the ML200s, which are the absolute worst movement part to build around because they need such a wide radius to turn, and they also need height above them, but the clearance is completely random. Like, for instance, this piece fits, this is like literally the only piece that fits here. You can't move it down, you can't move it up, you can't move it out, and you can't even fit like other smaller parts in the space. So if you try and fit that, you can fit it like that, but you can't even fit it like that. And it's the same even if you try and use like a 1x1. Like, it will go there, but it won't go the one pip out where these are currently. So just hitbox fuckery with the ML200s, and then the machinist doesn't let you wrap frames effectively because of how its hitbox works. So for instance, if I literally got one more pip, like they cut off this nook like one more, then I could have pushed the ML200s forward, and then I wouldn't have this awkward configuration underneath for wrapping around, because this would all be flush with the sides, because I could push all the legs forward one, and then I wouldn't have this weird sticking out of the back. But yeah, basically ML200s are pain and suffering, and the ML200 with the machinist are doubly so. But otherwise, basically got a nice little C-can looking thing on the back, completely hollow because I'm at the mass limit, and this thing's a fucking monster, but I don't even have the mass limit fusion, but completely hollow. Otherwise it was just gonna look really dumb. I couldn't really wrap the frames, like I said, because then you could just shoot the frames here, so I didn't want to throw legs forward and then have like the back chopped off and have this in the middle. So yeah, very much more of a raid build than anything, but it is, you know, the idea. And obviously you'd replace it with Vindicator, so I think it ends up being about 14,000 power score, at least the version that she had. I don't know if she changed some other stuff on it, but yeah, pretty easy, straightforward. I don't think I have any video of it or anything, but it's not terribly exciting. I mean, in general, against raids, weapon durability doesn't really fucking matter because they normally don't focus them. They do now. Some of them do. The Dawn's Children ones with the Auroras especially do, but that's more the exception than the rule. And even then, you generally want to just kill them faster rather than having tankier weapons. So, cool build. That's sort of the current concept / experimental phase again, but from like an efficacy standpoint, it's not anything super crazy or good. I mean, it's not even complex. Like, it has a lot of parts, but like a lot of the variety of parts are just, you know, different stacks of the same item. They're decor, which are one-off. Like all of the structural stuff is pretty straightforward. I have train plows on the front. I have flails, the APC passive melee weapons underneath to, you know, disincentivize ramming, and then connecting those to other parts of the build, because again you have to wrap around because there's no hit or no mesh points on the front. Are these which wrap around the side. I mean, just using, you know, 4x8 frames, tucking the seal underneath, and then all this armor on the side. So yeah, very, you know, simple, although like high part count. This is the PvP variant of the same idea of the other build, which is currently unnamed, which is the power unit and the trombone and the Helios. So this just takes off the Apollo and one of the Helios, pretty straightforward. And then there's obviously a hover, because the math works out real nice, and I could tuck it behind the cabin. So this is another, if people are being bullies in PvP, I can swap to it sort of build. Have another Mimi build. It's literally, you know, 5 fucking chords with a Aurora. I did originally make it with 7 chords because there are enough different gun mounts that you could do it, but like the actual placement of them was getting super fucky and the part count was inflating, and yeah, so I stopped doing that. But it's basically the Nova with a dummy amount of armor and then running chords. So I use this in easy raids to meme. Not really anything super crazy going on the inside of this either. I don't think, at least. Like, I spent quite a few hours just sort of finessing all the parts together, but basically the weapons are on damage pass-through parts, you know, gun mounts. There's hovers, and then I have a rack of armor between the hovers and aforementioned weapons that are mounted. So just mostly, you know, making everything fit rather than anything particularly special or important for like building strategies. I mean, you've seen this sort of setup with the small plaza and train plaza on the crab clone, and even to a certain extent the other spider build, so this isn't anything new, but that this is how I like armoring the Nova, so that it's really tanky but I can still use the shield without having to lose armor parts. Yeah. The Mi-24 you've already seen. This, I believe I've talked about before. A really quick rundown. It takes Alogalos's idea of using damage pass-through parts with low damage pass-through in order for the parts themselves to soak up as much damage as possible, while still allowing the Ermac cabin to get hit by damage and thus trigger its perk, since it's a on damage taken rather than a, you know, taking damage threshold like the Humpback is, for instance. So it just uses a bunch of damage pass-through parts with low damage pass-through value. As a result, very tanky. Has a lot of redundant bumpers, admittedly, for the melee parts. That's something I'd look at reworking. But, I mean, as far as density for stuff, I mean, you're very limited, so that's not like there's a whole lot of other options. This is currently what the clanmate is using in PvE because it's a little bit more oomph-y than the Vindicator, because they're the Millers and they're still kind of cracked. So it runs the Ermac, whoopsie, runs the Millers. Obviously it has a averter attached to the Ermac and then attached to gun mounts attached to the guns, because again, due to how large their hitboxes and the very niche power node placements on the averter, wasn't able to really fit all three at once. I figured the cabin would be more important since it's very much a cabin tanking build. Have your modules at the back and tucked around each other, and then uses 5 augers. This way you can either take one off and run the 4 auger one as is, or if you get a mass fused Ermac, then you can have some additional mass in order to slap some more armor on, which would probably be going on the back here on these, and then, you know, swapping out, upgrading some of the bumpers. So yeah, pretty proud of this one. Haven't named it either, but that's, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, This was a experimental build again, so looking at basically running circles around people with cyclones. It is a incredibly high power score, so as per usual with me, it's going to be primarily in PvE, which I've tested. Runs the favorite cabin, 3 cyclone, and then a RN seal. Pretty straightforward. This kind of took the idea of one of my earliest builds with legendary weapon, which was a Torero with a Reaper and a Aurora, which I don't have saved anywhere, but basically it just used side tracks and then a Steppenwolf parts as side armor, and was just a boat. It wasn't a like shooting gallery style like this, just because it was a single Reaper and a single Aurora, but in any case that was the inspiration when I first made this, and lighting is super broken with the new update, or well, changed on purpose rather than broken. Pretty straightforward. Gun mounts, modules. Cyclones are attached to them, and then I just have a disgusting amount of armor wrapped around the small tracks. If and when you get the favorite cabin fused, what you can also do is slap even more underneath. So you can't really do a whole lot more as far as actually making it look nice with like actual good parts, but you can sort of round off the underneath with these guys, which I thought looked pretty good. And then it might not be obvious, and also kind of questionable why I actually have the Cyclone on the front exposed, but the reason for that is because I can also fit on Panzersoul's favorite reflectors. So just a lot of armor for, and the like very slightly raised connection bit, but the favorite prevents you from wrapping it sideways on the last one, but whatever. It obviously has the cavern protecting it from the back. So yeah, very cool idea. Just again, another experimental build I'll continue tweaking around with, but sort of where it is currently, where like I sort of need the favorite cabin to be mass fused so I can bring it into like hard PvP or PvP or hard raids without worrying about dying immediately. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Have the neutrino because I like the scope, and then I can pop it off with the rift if I need to shoot behind me, but hopefully that'll be rather limited, and of course I can't even aim all the way down with the cyclone, so that's that. And then this, sort of like the king build and sort of like the current version of Tank Soup, is one that's meant to just be hyper durable / adaptive. So like the actual evolution one, this takes the premise of it. It's honestly probably better to call this one the evolution and the other one the masochist at this point, so I'm gonna call it that. Whoopsie. That's, oh, I totally just overrode the other one, didn't I? Fucking Mao. That's what I get for not sleeping. Oh my god. So that's gonna be problematic. I can still work with it though, so I'm going to rename this the Seizure Boy. My goodness. Masochist. And then I guess I'm gonna have to try and reverse engineer the evolution again. But I made it like a week ago and then I didn't touch it, cause shit was good for testing. Do I actually want to go through all the effort of rebuilding here on stream right now? Not really. I'll probably just pause the stream and then use the rough dimensions, because I know what stuff looks like. It's my own build. So let's mute that immediately. And then go back 2 minutes or so where I fucked up. Thank you people selling me wires, very cool. Okay, so I have it open, you guys can't see it, but I mean, whatever. So, let's see, rough dimensions. Yeah. Okay, this was such a pain in the ass to build, and now I gotta rebuild it again. It's honestly not too bad from what I recall. It's just, like I said, it's gonna be... Most of the stuff isn't, you know, complex. It's just actually getting stuff fit well to begin with. And then, you know, having to redo it when you invariably fuck stuff up. So I guess you get to see all the parts piece by piece this time around, don't you? But it pretty much takes the same idea as the other ones. Shocker, I know. And says, hey, it's sure a nice everything you have. Wouldn't it be a shame if you shooting me gave me speed and power and damage resistance? So it's pretty much that concept, just, you know, cranked up to 10. Here's a little build trick y'all might not be aware. I mean, I imagine you probably are, but you might not be aware. But you can stack slanted parts in smaller spaces than you quote-unquote should. So these parts are each 4 each, but you can stack 2 of them. Oh, that's fine. There's not enough pips for me to do it. Oh no, that is it. Nice. In a 7 area. Likewise, you can stack 2 of these, but not like that. Better. To fit in an area where you'd otherwise require a 8x3, which doesn't really exist well. There's the avian arrow wing, but it's not very durable, so generally not recommended. At least personally, I don't go that route, but obviously you can. Let's see. Boom. And then I do some more. I did have it the right way the first time, lol. Because then I do some more armor press, pressure fit, whatever you want to call it, stuff, as I am wont to do for those who are not aware. This is also another one. I spend way too much time on like all my builds, all my games. But this is one I like went back and forth on quite a bit, trying to figure out for certain how I wanted to do things, and I didn't really end up getting any good answers. So this was sort of what I ended up with. Not to say it's the best, that you can't do better or anything, just that this is what I had, and I will probably have to experiment with it some more in the future, especially after just rebuilding it all. What a fucking roller coaster of a stream this has been, huh? Especially with my propensity for cussing every 5 minutes as all these wondrous new exciting things happen. But just fleshing out the area for the Sabbaths to go. Not 100% sure what I had underneath the build, admittedly, for the frame or otherwise part work. but I can just keep working backwards and eventually all the gaps will be, well, just gaps, and then it will sort of solve itself, methinks. I'm wondering if I have this scaled right. Looks like it, but this does not fit very nicely. So I might have done something kind of silly like not on that. Obviously quite a good thing I had the stream going when I saved over there. Thank you, past me. Very cool. So the entire point of this build to begin with was me poking around with the idea of, hey, let's wrap parts around other parts and then give them a shit ton of damage resistance. So I did the same thing with the rupture a long time ago. So there is a averter tucked away in there that's touching all of those ruptures, and the ruptures are around the cap. And this was, excuse me, cranking that to 11 by also making the weapon perks and the cabin perk and the co-driver tanking related. So just a lot of tanking. Unfortunately, due to the hitboxes of stuff, so because of this like little nub of the Ermac, you can't like double stack these, nor can you put one on top or beside or anything, so you're actually extremely limited to what you can do with this, at least on an averter. But you can do that and have it connect to the two weapons and the cabin, and then I just tossed the third one on the front here, so it's an obvious target. I did muck about with the idea of having it on top like that, but then it's either sticking out a lot anyway and not getting the benefit of the averter and actually being mounted really weakly by being mounted on the non-power node part of the averter, and then I like want to build more armor on the sides and back, and it just sucked. I could like tuck it down by dropping it, but then it can only fire flush, and this build's already actually pretty tall since it's a heavy cabin on the not large wheels but larger than, you know, most of the other wheels. So I just had it on the front. I figured like that was probably about as easy as it was gonna get. Just gonna change angles on this build, see if I get a better shot of anything. See what else I'm missing. So it was, again, I like poked around with it in PvP very slightly. I think it was mostly bots. I don't know if I actually fought any other players with it. Well, no, I did do a couple of dailies with it. So it was a very mean build, from what I recall at least. But it was, I mean, I don't really do, this shouldn't be news to anybody who consistently watches these, but I just generally do my PvP to finish trials. Like I'll do the weekly challenges and stuff, but I'm not normally just doing it to like farm fuel or anything. I'm actively like constantly trying to test out new stuff and builds and ideas. So just running this with all stuff I already have maxed out, I don't find terribly conducive normally. So I don't play around with most of these builds actually that I showed so far in this video, just as a result of that. I have a feeling I actually ran these, but then I'm not 100%. Oh, because I didn't push it far enough up. Well, that answers that, doesn't it? That answers that just fine. Me and my harnessing a power of 2 stuff. Silly, silly. That's going to be a vast majority of this build. Figured out. Even though everybody's learning my pro building tricks and be able to use them against me, I don't know. The knowledge, it's overwhelming. Do you feel yourselves learning as you watch? New and horrid ways to break your favorite car building game. But I do that a lot. I break, quote unquote, break pressure fit a lot of things that I don't think are supposed to be done those certain ways. But does it stop me? No. Something like that. See if I get a better angle again. Oh, of course I can't forget the decor. Let's see, what else am I missing? Well, it's Paris Square 8803 and this one was 10,041, so a bit. To be fair, that's at least the iron seal. See, I don't even think I got a view of the backside, which is unfortunate. Like, I know generally what was there, of course, but I don't recall the specific armor pieces, which means I'm gonna have to figure it out a second time on stream, I guess. That's annoying. I obviously remember the general shape of it, but actual nuances, not so much. Of course, I don't even have a burnt count recorded, but I mean, pretty confident. I'm just, you know, never swear by my memory, because it is garbo. Especially when I finish building things, I'm like, great, I don't need to remember that. It's already built. Haha. And you know, I do stuff like that. See, I know I did armor like this at one point. And I want to say I changed it, but I don't recall how. So again, we're just going to be going through the motions until I remember, or do it anyway in a different way that hopefully ends up being better. Oh, what do I still need to fit? like I had something on the top middle there, but maybe not. Of course, the holograms getting in the way, especially with the preview, just spamming them. Of course, quite potentially the most funny thing of all about this is this isn't to actually say that any of these are necessarily the best way to go about doing it. This is me just being like, I'm pretty sure this is what I had, even if it might not, you know, end up actually being good per se. This is very much the way I'm leaning towards with this middle back armor section. Because, like, I know I had the hot red in. And that was the reason for all the, like, weird parts around it, rather than just using the, you know, 8x4s for the APC parts. But what I had for the rest of in there, mostly just guesswork. Love this part's stats, love the part's look, hate how I end up using it a lot of the time just to like that. Yeah, see, so obviously I'm close, but like I was at a slightly different one. I was at 10,040 when I was also obviously not over tonnage. So I guess I improvised a bit here, especially since I don't even have the holograms on. Believe it was something like that, but obviously better. Interesting to note, the hologram is symmetrical, so the front and the back look the same. So me rotating one backwards and then having on the back of the build wouldn't have made a difference, and I know that because I checked. So I know that's a new part I just added like now while building, but I don't think that would be the difference between the stats being the same or not. So what did I change? Oh, maybe I just had the lightweight frames in the same. Well, that would not be a power score difference, just mass. See, go back to the back of the build. I didn't even go to the back of the build, I just showed the side. Ugh, I think I literally just had not the listener on, honestly. That still doesn't work well. I'm close to the answer. Very close. Ugh, I hate unnumbered stuff. Oh, sorry, not odd number, like, oh, the number 3, but just stuff when it's not power 2 makes it a lot harder to fit other stuff together. Can't really tuck the iron seal underneath. That was the last core pieces, I think. So would have been that gone, maybe that gone. I still have more mass and more power score. And then I have less. Not sure what that's about. I don't have a part count for it or anything. It's literally just like that view that I'm showing currently. I was like, that's about as far as I went back, and I can see that I didn't have listener on it. But that's pretty much it. It was just the front and the side view. And I'm 100 power score off. I mean, it doesn't have to be an exact copy. I'd argue that whatever I had, this is probably at least somewhat better. But I am curious as to what that difference would have been. Because all things considered, pretty minor. Which means very close to what I had. Whatever, I mean, it's not over. I have no idea what I did differently, but I think it'll be a non-issue that I guess I did. It is 100% gonna bug me though. Cause like, bronze, how do you make like 95% of the exact same build and not remember what one piece difference you had? Like, it's literally a 16 power score difference between this and that. But also I didn't have that, and I'm not even sure if I had that. So it's like, what single other thing would I put on? Or like 2 other parts, because there's not exactly a whole lot of room to cram stuff on this build still. The answer, my friends, unfortunately, is I got no clue. But no, whatever, should be fine. So that is like as in-depth a look at the build as you can get, I guess. But yeah, very much a oh, you're approaching me sort of thing, or mostly it's me approaching them, where it's like, well, allow me to get faster and more powerful and deal more damage and take less damage. Sorry, none of these actually deal more damage, but take less damage and take less damage. I think there's a machine gun that deals more damage. I couldn't even tell you what it is now. I guess it's the aspect, the specter line, not anything fixed angle. Damage resistance, damage resistance. Damage resistance for overheat rather than hits, yeah, so. Yeah, only thing you could theoretically swap out would be like the specters, but obviously those are less durable and wouldn't really fit the niche, so. think that will be that just fine. Got the evolution again, but slightly different for reasons I do not know. Everything I can see on the outside looks identical. I used a different paint, but whatever. Otherwise identical. So I had to have like finagled some of the stuff in there a little bit differently, but I don't even know what that would have been because there's so like not a whole lot of choices there. I don't even know what else I would have done that would have fit a 3x4x2 anyway. Or 3x4x8 rather. Especially for being more dense, like I could fit, in theory, hard modules, but I don't think I did. Because this is what, yeah, that's more durability by far. Running 270 as opposed to the other, so... I don't know what it's about, but in any case, that is that. So, yay! And then the final one, which is a bit of a backtrack, is this one. So this is obviously not finished either, as you can see from the, like, haphazardly slapped decor slash thing. But basically, it's me saying, hey, let's just make something ridiculously tanky in raids. Because the harvester does a lot of damage, but it falls off because despite its melee resistance and its explosion resistance, ramming things causes things to take a lot of damage. But if you attach it to our good friend the master cabin, you can heal it, and then you can slap on an Omamori or an Averter and get even more damage resistance. And yeah, that was basically the idea. Buff it with the flash, and then maybe slap on the Aegis, so now that the Aegis Prime takes 2 energy rather than 3, I can actually potentially work it into this build. The problem is that the Bigfoot wheels are kind of needed to keep the harvesters off the ground, and they like very explicitly need to be where they are in order to be buffed by the Averter and the Master. But I have 16 energy to work with. I spent 12 on the weapons and 1 on the Averter slash Omamori. So if I go with the Cheetah, so I get faster recharge, I only have 2 energy left, so I can choose the Aegis, but then I can't choose the Doppler, and I can't choose the Cloak. So kind of lose your ambush capabilities on a 92 kph vehicle, you know, so very limiting in those regards for the sake of just being, you know, kind of a hit and run build too. You want the Omamori rather than the Averter, so in theory you might actually want something like that. But that doesn't actually connect there because the strip's only 1 deep. So you have to try and like figure out a way to do it upside down instead, but of course it doesn't fit like you'd want it to by just being 1 pip further in. I don't even think I can. Get it to connect to anything there at all. Which kinda makes it worse. Wild too, because it definitely feels like there should be a pip of clearance. Like it looks like there is there, but not, you know, one pip down where it would actually be useful. Even though I have a thing that has a pip and then some of space it takes, but I can't slap the memory there. But it definitely looks like it should fit there. So yeah, you'd want ideally the Omamori, and the 2 harvesters, the flash to buff it, or theoretically, you know, flame weapon instead if you wanted to go that route for even more damage. But obviously range and not catching up to people restrictions, and then slap the Apollo, which would also be pretty neat. So that's kind of the idea for this, especially as a result, obviously, of the Aegis Prime buff slash tweak slash rework, whatever you want to call it. But it's, again, very much going to be a to-do thing. I'm thinking the solution might honestly be, well, with my first instinct with the master rework, and just make it a sideways build instead, because there's the top and bottom pips there as opposed to the side and side, so you can actually do that, which is obviously a hell of a lot easier for actually hitting parts. And then you can loop your stuff. Bad example, I guess, because it doesn't actually touch it. Oh wait, no, it totally does. There we go, I'm a genius, as per usual. So do that, and look at that, that fits pretty nice, all things considered. I mean, could be better, could be a lot worse. But then you aren't going to be able to run the Bigfoot wheels, because then you're built sideways. And then you've got to deal with all the stuff of, you know, the build being sideways. But I think that's probably the route I'm going to have to go. Just because otherwise getting the Omamori plus the Master plus the Harvesters connected together is just way too much work. So I guess we could probably say for penny and for pound and just have me do the try and build that this time around. Not so sure I'm sold on it. What I'm gonna do is I wanna grab some water, and then I'll do it just as a good little example again of, you know, the building process, since I didn't really go through that with the Ermac evolution slash masochist thing. It was just me rebuilding from mostly the image and, well, and memory, but can go over it with this one, so I'll be right back. Man, you know, water is so delicious sometimes. I mean, I'm mostly trying to have my cake and eat it too, I guess, to a certain extent with this build, because I'm trying to get, like, all the buffs for survivability going at once. Well, not buffs per se, but modules that assist with that, rather, I suppose. So also I had the cloak to begin with, because cloak is cool. And a pretty good survivability tool. But if your option is cheetah for faster recharge of the Aegis, or cloak, kind of feels like going the faster recharge is going to have to be the way you go, you know? I don't know, I suppose you could also go not the flash route, spend one on enlightenment for the debuff, and then use a flame weapon. But I don't have anything better than the remedy right now, and the utility of the flash slash spark is extremely high, especially for a melee build running a medium cabin. So I don't know, it really does feel like cheetah plus Bigfoot is sort of the delicious way to go. But I guess I can always test once we have this bad boy figured out. So what I want to do for this next, I did mention a long ass time ago that you can actually fill in the gaps with a tackler if you were so desiring. Not that I'd recommend that, and it's not really possible anymore due to these hitbox changes, I'm guessing. Oh no, it totally is. That's wild. So you can shoot through the hitbox that it doesn't let you have stuff clip through, but barrels can clip through that. See, that's kind of crazy, but not particularly useful, I don't think, unless you're running the Draco, but the Draco is also 4 energy, so unless you have 2, so 1 on either side, but then that's your entire energy allocation. So I don't think people are gonna quite be doing that. Still an option nonetheless. The question is, if you make a sideways build, where do you put the Omnis? You wouldn't really want to have them on the front, but if I have them tucked up close behind here, it's gonna not really work out so well, I don't think, because I'm not going to be able to put a whole lot of armor on these stuff. See what I can do. Oh, and then it breaks the power of 2, because of course it does. Disgusting. Assuming an Omni is not going to be happy to fit like that. Let's try a little bit longer in both directions. Yeah, but then, like, how do you armor that, right? Pro tip, you don't, that's the build. And then you launch. So would probably ideally want the flash mounted, you know, on top of the harvester-ish, but there is the cabin conveniently located as well as the Omamori, but I don't think you're going to be able to get both of them. So the question is, which one is more important? Probably the master. Gonna be a huge target sticking out like that though. So I don't know if that's any better. But you know, again, if we're primarily fighting bots, it's also to a certain extent, like, it doesn't matter. We'll have to see. See, and I could almost fit, maybe I can fit that, or not like that, but like 77 durability versus 54 with like half the size, thus half the chance of getting hit in, you know, ideal world theory, but do kind of dig that. Probably want some sort of defensive part in the front. Maybe not a full train plow. Oh, and it looks like it's gonna eat like a half pip with that, so I only have like 2 pips of height to work with there. Probably do that. Hope it doesn't interfere. Helps if I have the Jenny attached, I suppose. I mean, on the plus side, me reworking this has got like everything connected to the master nodes. So that's, you know, an upgrade in theory. Could probably stand to replace these with their 4x counterparts. Oh, this is getting so janky. Also why I tend to stay away from sideways builds. But like, it does seem to have some merit. Even though it looks an absolute abomination. Durability of that is 54. The only other like good fitting 2x6 is that, but it's only 41. Doesn't even have pips on all sides, and it also doesn't like physically fit as nicely due to the curves. But my only other option is the even worse looking and still worse durability pipe. What a world. See, and I feel like with the Aegis, I kind of want to balance it out. It's odd shape by having like the cheetah, but I don't know that I should actually have the cheetah and it right on each other. I feel like I should almost have it on the other side, since I have this space here where there's not really anything being protected. And of course, you know, the whole armoring thing as well. And the master's thin enough, I can't just toss the module underneath. How many of these would he? Oh wow, lots, I guess. Even with the cheetah, dang. It is hungry for mass. So I'd probably have it not be a whole lot wider. So is there an issue with me twisting this? Yes, because of the... Okay. So that has to go there like that. So I can't tuck the wheel tighter on that side, so I'm not going to do it on that side because I want it to be symmetrical for turning. Maybe I should just do that. Not that it prevents the whole sticking out thing, but it does center the bubble. Doesn't protect the harvesters though, which are kind of the entire thing I'm trying to protect. So unless I can mount that like that. But if it's centered, it's not touching the master nodes. Grand. That still looks like it's not fully protecting it either. How bad was this? Does it matter if I flip it the other way? Well, I wouldn't touch the master node. That does seem to fully encompass it. So even though it's off center. Thank you, market being very fire while I do this today. If I want wheels, I should probably have the suck wheels on the far outside, but I'm gonna put them like this just to balance it instead. And then probably not gonna keep the heavy frame because heavy frame, but like that maybe. It seems like it's gonna be too large for a medium build. Maybe not. Still a lot of mass to play with. Can't even see it with the snow. I totally don't like sideways builds and all these funky stipulations. Yuck. Probably most likely to lose those front wheels, so I actually want this facing the other way, but then of course the back frames cause me to lose 2 wheels at a time. What struggles? This thing's also gonna be a fucking brick. But I'd like, to be fair, I do like brick builds. So that's not necessarily a bad thing per se. Just worried about making it look nice. Especially because I can't do the general thing of, you know, just throwing fenders around the wheels. Not, well, not as easily, but I suppose I still can, can't I? kind of coming together. Not to say this is necessarily good, or the best it could be, but it is coming together nonetheless. Well, that if I get a mass fusion, I can. Oh, it already is. Well, so much for another wheel. I can make that look good with that. Don't know how I'm gonna fill that odd shape space. On the plus side, I can use the odd shape space to fit the other odd space thing there. Suppose I could probably fit the engine in pretty well. Stupid vent thing pokes out, but it always does, so if I can deal with it there, could work, could certainly do. Can't stretch any further on the other side, so I don't really want to do it on this one. Unless there's something else I can squeeze underneath there, but I don't really think there is. I can make this a 6x4 instead, at the very least. But I don't really know what, if anything, you put there. Could always do with more some redundancy like that, but then there's just a 4x connected to those. But at the same time, if I'm already pretty sure it's going to be sacrificial, then having redundancy for the main bits isn't a terrible idea. Assuming I end up getting the build weight balanced so that it's not a huge issue if they pop those two. Well, they'll probably only get like one, you know, ideally, if that, but sort of depends on how reckless I drive too. Of course, very quickly filling up that mass, especially when I use plows. Could reduce all the frames by 2, scrunch it up 4 pips. Though it does kill my ability to fit other stuff. Let's see, what would it look like other than, you know, bad. Oh, but yeah, let's get this garage history and then squelch. No idea what I'm going to fit in those spaces, if anything. But that does definitely compact stuff a lot. Yeah, it doesn't seem too bad without the Bigfoot, honestly. Most complaints here are just still very much it being asymmetrical. Oh, I can't even really scrunch on this set, can I? People sold me enough stuff to make another one. Thank you, people. Very cool. Gonna grab more water, but I think I'm gonna quote-unquote have to expand it again. And I might just armor the top part with stuff like scorched instead of doing the super dense stuff. We are at the hour mark, which honestly doesn't seem too bad considering how I've basically made 2 builds on stream. Presented a bunch of others too. I have no idea how that helps me, but that is an option. Just tucking that up to... Definitely particularly a fan of the premise of being able to basically heal all my modules every time. Pretty neat opportunity if I can get it working. But but a lot of odd-shaped parts. Working hard to make it not so.
totally forgot the Sakura was a thing. I might have to try and reincorporate that into the helicopter build since it's basically a third Torino bonnet. Well, this doesn't seem to really be going like crazy better, but I feel like it's a lot closer to being able to be so than what I had before. At the very least, lots of stuff are very nicely protected. Well, it seems like it's half passable, so I think I will probably call it here. And then try out some of these goobers during raids. See how well they hold up or otherwise. That should be stream done then as well. Obviously it went a stitch longer than I had originally intended, but I think got some pretty interesting stuff out of it via building. Just need to figure out what to do with some of the stuff, and then of course shuffle around and save some of the new stuff.